Hi there, guys. Happy Halloween. Happy All Hallows Eve. I hope you're all enjoying this magnificent weekend. I sure am. And welcome to a very special and exciting episode of Éire's Epics in History. For those of you who need a recap, I started this YouTube channel back in March. I only did it in March. I made a video every day for in honor of my Irish heritage because, March is the month of St. Patrick's Day. But in addition to St. Patrick's Day, there's another important Irish holiday. Three guesses what it is. Yep, Halloween. I know, right? Some of you might be like, how is Halloween connected to Ireland? Well, truth be told, Ireland is the birthplace of All Hallows Eve. Except, and what's very interesting is that, whereas St. Patrick's Day came about around the beginning of when Christianity was introduced to Ireland, Halloween dates back beyond that to pagan Celtic times. Only the Celts called it by a different name, Samhain. Now, Samhain was traditionally one of the four main festivals that the Celts celebrated throughout the year. And out of all four, it was the most important. It was actually their new year. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to put together a special episode to talk a bit about Samhain and about the significance of Halloween in both Ireland and America. And so let's begin with a little bit more about Samhain. So the Celts, they celebrated Samhain as a 3-day festival from usually about October 31st to November 2nd or November 3rd. And, it's funny because October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd all together make up what's known as Hallowtide in the Christian church. And Hallowtide is considered to be the trifecta of Halloween season in the church's eyes. There's All Hallows Eve, there's All Saints Day, which is November 1st, and then there's All Souls Day, which is November 2nd. So these three days are known as Hallowtide, and they're considered to be of in the church significant days in regards to Christianity. But where do they get that from? They took it from actually the Celts. And part of it, the reason is they wanted to, part of it was they wanted to do away with certain pagan practices and views. But part of it, the other half of the coin, is that it shows that they took these traditions from the Celts and continued them on, albeit they just anglicized or Christianized them. Because of that, those traditions from that time still live on today. And we're going to get a bit into them right now. So Samhain, basically, Samhain, as I said, it was a 3-day festival. And it was considered by the Celts to be the most important because it was, for them, the new year. And on this day, they believed that the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest. And what that meant was that spirits could cross over from the other side and walk amongst the living. Now, there are certain traditions that we practice today that, again, are from the Celts. For instance, trick-or-treating, that started with the Celts putting out juices and fruit as offerings to the spirits. And today, we give out candy, or in some countries, you might get money. But that's how it started. The Celts would put out fruit and juice outside their homes for the spirits to feast on. Why did they do this? Well, part of it, yes, was to honor the spirits of the dearly departed, but the other part was for protection. Because the Celts felt or believed that the spirits wanted to possess their bodies. They wanted to possess the bodies of living, breathing human beings so they could remain in the physical world. So the Celts put out this offering, but they also had another form of protection. They would actually dress themselves in animal pelts and any other materials they had to disguise themselves as spirits. The idea was, by disguising themselves as spirits, they could trick the actual spirits into thinking that they themselves were spirits, and therefore there were no humans around for the actual spirits to possess. And so today, we continue that time-honored tradition by dressing up in costumes. That's where the whole tradition of dressing up as different figures came from. Only today, it's more diverse. We can dress as though we're someone from the 80s or the 90s. We can dress like a clown. We can dress like, like Michael Myers from the Halloween movies, or we can dress as like a butterfly. All these different costumes. But back then, the idea was to dress up like a spirit to protect oneself. In addition to this, they also would have fires on mounds, these large hills. They would have these bonfires, which you don't see it too much, but it still continues today. One tradition that does not continue is or at least I hope doesn't continue, is the sacrificing of animals. Yeah, I don't really see that around, and I don't want to see that around. But yeah, they would sacrifice animals as offerings to the gods and goddesses of Celtic mythology, because they also could come across the veil. And they also, again, wanted to honor them as part of their culture. Now, there's a traditional treat that still is widely popular in Ireland at this time of year. It's called barmbrack, and what it is, it's a cake. And there used to be a little game, there used to be a game associated with it, and still is. It's changed a bit, but the idea was that in each slice of cake was a different item that had been hidden away. There was a ring, and if you got the ring, that meant you were going to get married within the year. Another was a small little pea, like the vegetable, a pea, and if you got that, that meant usually poor fortune for you. If you got like a rag, that meant, or actually I think the pea might have meant that you weren't going to get married within the year. And then there was a stick that if you got a stick, it meant, poor fortune, no luck. If you got a piece of rag, that meant a future without money. And I think there was like one more item. I can't remember it. Maybe it was a coin. Maybe I'm not sure. But whatever it might have been, I think it meant that you were gonna come into wealth in the future. So if I remember it, I'll definitely say it at some point. But to go a bit deeper into it, there is actually. Does anyone know where the spirits in ancient Ireland would cross over from at this time of year? The answer is a winnegat. I know, a very hard word, but it's a Gaelic word, Awinagat. It means cave of cats. And Awinagat is an archaeological site that you can still find in Ireland today. It's very hard, but it's located in County Roscommon and in a place called Rathcroning, or Rathcroning. Now, Rathcroning is actually the location of more than 250 archaeological sites from ancient Ireland. There are a lot of different mounds and hilltops which hold significance, but what we're talking about is Awinagat. Awinagat is a site that is very hard to find. It's at the side of a dead-end cul-de-sac at this location. And what it is that it's like a tunnel, a very small, narrow tunnel that has, it extends 37 meters, and it's cut into the limestone that surrounds the area. And basically, if you saw it, it kind of looks like the tunnel, like only the top half of the tunnel is on the surface and the rest of it is buried underground. Apparently, in medieval times, there was a souterrain, as the French would say, enclosed it. And what that means is that it became, it's like an underground archaeological site is what it is. And so this tunnel on the surface, like you can go, like everything, it's the entrance to a cave that is underground. And it's never been excavated. It has not been excavated, but I know scientists have used technology to peer into the ground and see what's below the surface. And they've seen many different archaeological sites. But the Celts believed that at this time of year, the spirits could cross over from the other world into ours, and vice versa, that we could cross over into the other world, we, living, breathing human beings, by going through this tunnel. And there's many legends associated with it. The reason it's called Cave of Cats is that, I'll tell you this one legend, is that there was apparently a feast where all these mythological Celtic warriors gathered. They gathered at this feast, and there's something called the heroes portion or the champions portion, where the best warrior gets or the bravest warrior gets the choicest cut of meat. And there were three warriors. One was Éire Budak. Another was Colin Kiernock. And then there was Cuchulainn. Now, let me actually just check and make sure or I have one thing right. I just want to make sure it's... Connell, yes, Connell Kiernock. Just wanted to make sure I had that right. So, Éire Budak, Connell Kiernock, and Cuchulainn. And these three warriors, they gathered at the feast. And they all thought each one of them thought they were the bravest. And the feast was organized by this trickster named Brickrew. And basically, he didn't make it clear who was the bravest. And he didn't, determine who was going to get the choicest cut of meat. And as a result, the three of them began arguing. So they decided to settle the argument by going to Allel, or Allel, I believe, sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, trying my best with these Gaelic names, but he was the husband of Queen Maeve, who is a famous who is a famous Irish queen in Celtic mythology. And she, and basically, they went to Alel, they went to his place, and the idea to determine who was the bravest, what happened was they were fed for 3 nights and given lodging, and everything was okay. But then on the 4th night, there was when the food on the 4th night was brought out to them, all of a sudden, these big giant cats emerged from a Winnegat, the cave, which they were at, and attacked them. Now, Leary Budach and Conall Kieranach, they fled, but Cuchulainn stayed and was able to overcome and defeat the cats, and he was declared the bravest. That's the version of the story I read. So I don't know if he actually got the choicest cut of meat. I assume he did, but yeah. And they say that the other world, it went by a term known as Tir na Nog. You might see it as the name of a pub these days, but back then, Tir na Nog was considered to be the other world, and it means land of youth. And it was considered to be a beautiful place, a land of plenty, but it also had a dark side to it, which apparently emerged at this time of year. And that's why there was fear among the Celts that a lot of malevolent spirits would come and try and possess them. Now, it's a lot of Irish immigrants over the centuries who came to America brought these customs and traditions over. And that's how we adopted them here, as well as to other lands, and that's how they were adopted there. And America has really made Halloween what it is today, with going trick-or-treating, dressing in costumes, and going to parties. But again, a lot of this emerged from the Celts, who passed down these traditions, and even again during when Christianity was introduced into Ireland, these traditions still continued, albeit they were adjusted or altered, but they still continued in some sense, and Irish immigrants brought them to America. Like putting out juices and fruit. That came to America and became trick-or-treating, along with a tradition from England where on All Souls Day, November 2nd, you apparently had poor people centuries ago who would go to homes and agree to pray for the dead in exchange for a little piece of cake, or at the time what we would consider today to be a piece of bread. But so that tradition, along with putting out fruits and juices, that came to America, and that became trick-or-treating. I'll tell you one more interesting fact. Jack-o'-lanterns, those came from Ireland. But the original jack-o'-lantern wasn't a pumpkin, it was a turnip. And that comes from the story of Stingy Jack. Now, Stingy Jack is a great story. Basically, there was this Irishman, Jack, who was a horrible man, a drunk, a deceiver, would con people out of money, out of land, out of fortune and wealth. And the devil one night appeared to him on the road as he was walking home, and he knew that the devil had come for his soul. And he said to the devil, well, before you take my soul, can we go to a pub, for one last drink? And the devil agreed. So they went to the pub, they got their drinks, and then Jack convinces the devil to pay for the drinks by transforming himself into a coin. And then once the drinks have been paid for, the devil can transform back and they can go. So the devil agrees, and Jack takes the coin, the transfigured devil, who is now a coin, and puts it in his pocket where he has a crucifix. And because the crucifix is there, the devil's powers are neutralized and he cannot change back. So eventually Jack agrees to let him go if he promises to give him another 10 years. So the devil agrees. Jack, 10 years later, comes across the devil again, same place, on the road at night. And he says to the devil, okay, we can go. But first, I would just like an apple from that apple tree. And he points to the apple. And the devil's like, okay. And the devil climbs up the tree to get him the apple, only for Jack to then set up a bunch of different crucifixes around the tree. So the devil can't get down now because he can't touch the crucifixes. And he's cursing and yelling at Jack, and Jack's laughing. And Jack only agrees to let him go if he promises never to take his soul. And the devil agrees. Now, Jack is still human, and eventually the drink gets the better of him, and he does end up dying. And when he goes to heaven, God and St. Peter won't let him in because of the way he lived his life, deceiving people, drinking, and stealing. So he goes down to hell and begs to be let in, but the devil keeps to his word and says, I can't let you in. And instead offers him a lone flame for Jack to carry and wander throughout the world, because now he's a doomed spirit, destined to wander for all eternity. And this flame is placed inside of a turnip. That is what the Irish originally used as jack-o'-lanterns. And when they brought this tradition to America, it became pumpkins, because pumpkins are easier to carve than turnips, and also cooler, let's be honest. But there are still, there's actually one famous ancient turnip jack-o'-lantern that is on display in a museum in Ireland somewhere. You can look into it. It's just type in turnip jack-o'-lantern and you'll come across it. But yeah, so that's how we got some of our traditions, like trick-or-treating, jack-o'-lanterns, dressing up in costumes. And so I will say to you all now, have a very happy and very safe Samhain, aka a very happy and safe All Hallows Eve, a very safe and happy Halloween. Thank you, and please stay alert, because I do have a few plans in the new year to restart the channel, as well as create some other video content, and I will put out an update soon about that. So thank you so much, and happy Halloween.